You're just a broke old man who values money more than your own family's lives. That's what my son said when I refused to give him $85,000 for his wife's emergency surgery. The words cut deep, but I've lived long enough to know when something doesn't add up. He hung up on me, called me selfish, said I'd rather watch my daughter-in-law die than help my own family. But here's what Brandon didn't know. I'd already made 3 phone calls. The hospital had no record of his wife. The doctor didn't exist. And Sarah was perfectly healthy, posting photos from a farmer's market while supposedly dying in a hospital bed. My son thought he was scamming a foolish old man. Instead, he just declared war on someone who doesn't give up easily. Within 48 hours, Brandon would lose everything: his wife, his house, his freedom, and his children, because sometimes the most loving thing a father can do is destroy his son's world to save everyone else. If you want to see how a broke old man can dismantle a criminal empire with nothing but patience and determination, stick around. This story will show you exactly what happens when someone underestimates the wrong person. The call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night. Dad. Brandon's voice was shaking. Dad, I need your help. Sarah. Sarah's in the hospital. My heart clenched. Sarah was my daughter-in-law, married to my son for 12 years, a sweet woman who worked as an elementary school teacher and had never caused anyone a moment's trouble. What happened? I sat up in bed, reaching for my glasses. They found something. A mass. The doctor says she needs emergency surgery Monday morning, but our insurance. His voice broke. Dad, they want $85,000 up front. The surgeon is Dr. Michelle Carter at Portland General. She's supposed to be the best, but if we don't have the money by Sunday night, they'll have to use someone else. And Sarah might. Slow down, Brandon. I switched on the lamp, my medical training kicking in automatically. What kind of mass? What's the location? Which department is Dr. Carter with? It's complicated. Something with her abdomen. Dad, I know I've asked before, but this is Sarah. This is life or death. I've got about $15,000 saved, but I need $70,000 more. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't. I'd heard this tone before, not from Brandon specifically, but in my years of practice I'd learned to recognize when something didn't add up. Emergency surgery on a Monday morning for a mass discovered on a Friday night. Upfront payment demands. It was possible but unusual. Where's Sarah now? I asked. She's at home. They gave her something for the pain and sent her home until Monday. Dad, please. I know I haven't been the best son, but Sarah doesn't deserve this. Brandon was right about one thing: he hadn't been the best son. At 44, he was an insurance broker who seemed to live slightly beyond his means. Over the past few years, I'd helped him out with a $23,000 business loan in 2022 and $31,000 for what he called car repairs in 2023, neither of which had been repaid despite his promises. But Sarah was innocent in all of this. If she truly needed surgery, I'd mortgage my house if necessary. Let me make some calls tomorrow, I said carefully. I'll see what I can do. Dad, thank you. Thank you so much. I knew you'd understand. I'll text you all the details: the doctor's name, the room number, everything. After he hung up, I sat in the darkness for a long time staring at my phone. Something about the call felt wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint what. This felt different. This felt like I was about to discover something I didn't want to know. The text came through 20 minutes later. Dr. Michelle Carter, Portland General Hospital, room 314. Surgery scheduled 7 a.m. Monday morning. Saturday morning, I made coffee and tried to shake off my unease. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the stress of potentially losing my daughter-in-law was making me suspicious of my own son. I'd been widowed for 5 years now. Margaret's death from cancer had brought Brandon and me closer for a while, but that closeness had gradually deteriorated as his financial requests became more frequent. Still, family was family, and Sarah had always been nothing but kind to me. I thought about the previous times Brandon had asked for help. The business loan in 2022 had been for what he called expanding his insurance client base, new office equipment, marketing materials, that sort of thing. But his business hadn't seemed to grow much afterward. The car repair money in 2023 was supposedly for transmission work on both his and Sarah's vehicles, plus some body work after what he claimed was a parking lot incident. Neither request had felt quite right at the time, but I'd pushed down my doubts. What father wants to believe his son is lying to him? This request was different though. This involved Sarah's health, her life potentially. If Brandon was lying about this, it would cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I spent Saturday afternoon researching Portland General Hospital's cardiac surgery department online. Dr. Michelle Carter wasn't listed on their staff directory, but that didn't necessarily mean anything. Specialists sometimes had privileges at multiple hospitals, or she could be new. By Sunday morning, my unease had crystallized into something sharper. I picked up my phone and dialed Portland General's main number. Good morning, Portland General Hospital. Good morning. I'm calling to verify a surgery scheduled for tomorrow morning with Dr. Michelle Carter. The patient would be Sarah Whitman. One moment please. The hold music played for what felt like forever. Sir, I'm not showing any surgery scheduled for a Sarah Whitman tomorrow, and we don't have a Dr. Michelle Carter on our surgical staff. My blood turned to ice. Could you double-check that? Room 314. I've checked all our surgical schedules, sir. Room 314 is actually in our pediatric ward. Is there anything else I can help you with? I thanked the operator and hung up my hand, shaking slightly. In 40 years of medicine I'd seen plenty of insurance fraud, but I'd never imagined my own son would be capable of something like this. But there was a small chance I was wrong. Maybe Brandon had gotten confused about the hospital or the doctor's name. Maybe he was panicking and had mixed up details. Before I did anything irreversible I needed to be absolutely certain. I called Sarah's number directly. "Hi, Dr. Whitman." Her voice was cheerful and normal. "How are you doing?" "I'm well, dear. I was just calling to check on you. Brandon mentioned you weren't feeling well." "Me? No, I feel fine. We went to that new farmer's market yesterday. Found some amazing apples." "Why did Brandon say I was sick?" I closed my eyes. "Just a misunderstanding, I think. I'm glad you're feeling well. Are you sure you're okay? You sound worried." "I'm fine, Sarah. Take care of yourself." The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. No surgery, no Dr. Carter, no emergency at all. Brandon had fabricated the entire story to manipulate me into giving him $85,000. But I needed to understand why. What could possibly require that specific amount of money that he'd be willing to lie about his wife's health? I made one phone call that changed everything. My contact at the bank had been handling my accounts for years. "George, good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" "I need you to look at something for me confidentially. If someone were to request a wire transfer of $85,000 on short notice, what would that typically indicate?" "That's a significant amount. Could be a down payment on a house, settling a debt, gambling losses." He paused. "George, is everything all right? This isn't like you to ask about large transfers. Just helping a friend understand their options." "Thanks, Jim." Gambling losses. The phrase stuck in my mind like a splinter. I thought about Brandon's behavior over the past year, the financial requests, the vague explanations, the slight nervousness he'd shown during our recent conversations. I opened my laptop and started searching. What I found next would make me question everything I thought I knew about my son. The second lie was even worse. A quick Google search revealed something interesting about Brandon's lifestyle. According to his social media posts, he'd been living quite well recently. New restaurants, weekend trips, photos from what looked like expensive venues. For someone who supposedly needed money for car repairs and business expenses, he seemed to be doing remarkably well. I dug deeper into public records, something I'd never thought I'd need to do for my own son. Property records, business filings, anything that might give me insight into where Brandon's money was actually going. That's when I found the apartment lease. The Crystal Heights apartment complex was an upscale development on the other side of Portland. Unit 2B was leased under Brandon's name with a monthly rent of $4,200. The lease had started in March 2024, just 8 months ago. $4,200 a month. That was more than many people's entire monthly income, and Brandon was paying it in addition to his mortgage. No wonder he'd been asking me for money. But why would he need a second apartment? The answer that came to mind made my stomach turn. I sat in my car outside the Crystal Heights complex for an hour, trying to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to go home and pretend I'd never made these discoveries. The father in me wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation, but the doctor in me knew that sometimes you have to keep cutting until you find all the diseased tissue. I called the apartment complex's leasing office. "Crystal Heights, this is Jennifer speaking." "Hello, I'm calling about Unit 2B. I believe my son Brandon Whitman has a lease there." "Yes, Mr. Whitman is one of our tenants. Is there something I can help you with?" "I'm trying to reach him, but he's not answering his phone. Is there any way you could tell me if he's currently staying there?" "I'm sorry, I can't give out information about our tenants' comings and goings, but I can tell you that the unit is currently occupied by Ms. Ashley Reed. She's been very nice. Always pays the rent on time." Ashley Reed. I'd never heard Brandon mention that name. "I see. Thank you for your time." I drove home in a daze. Pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve clicking together in my mind. Brandon was paying for an apartment where another woman lived. He'd been asking me for money while maintaining this expensive secret, and now he'd fabricated a medical emergency to try to get even more. But I still didn't have the full picture. There had to be more. What I found next made my blood run cold. That evening I did something I'd never imagined doing. I hired a private investigator. Detective Kevin Murphy had been recommended by a colleague, a former police officer who specialized in financial fraud cases. Dr. Whitman, he said when I called him that Sunday night. I understand you have concerns about a family member. My son has been asking for money and I've discovered some discrepancies. I need to know what I'm dealing with before I make any decisions. I can have some preliminary information for you by tomorrow evening. What's the time frame we're working with? He's expecting an answer about a large loan by Monday night. I'll prioritize this. Can you give me his full name and address? I provided Brandon's information feeling like I was betraying my own son. But the alternative, giving him $85,000 based on a lie about Sarah's health, was unthinkable. Monday morning I waited. Brandon called twice asking about the money, his voice getting more desperate each time. Dad, the surgery is tomorrow morning. I need to get this sorted out today. I'm working on it, son. Working on it, Dad. This is Sarah we're talking about. How can you be so calm when my wife might die? The manipulation was so blatant now that I could recognize it. Using Sarah's fictional illness to guilt me into compliance. How long had he been playing these games? Monday evening, Detective Murphy called back. Dr. Whitman, I have information for you. Are you somewhere you can talk privately? Yes. Your son owes approximately $140,000 to Thunder Bay Casino. The debt has been sold to some very unforgiving people who charge 18% interest monthly. He's also been supporting a woman named Ashley Reed for the past 8 months. The apartment is just the beginning. She has credit cards, a car lease, all in his name. The room seemed to spin around me. $140,000 in gambling debt. A mistress he was supporting financially. No wonder he needed money so desperately. But the gambling debts were the real shock. There's more, Detective Murphy continued. According to Oregon law, what your son did, fabricating a medical emergency to solicit money, constitutes wire fraud. If he sent you any texts about it, that's a federal crime. But Oregon is a one-party consent state for recording conversations. If you want to get the truth on record, then he called me Heartless. The call came at 8:33 p.m. that Monday night, just as Detective Murphy had predicted it would. Dad, I need an answer. The hospital needs the money transferred tonight or they'll give Sarah's surgery slot to someone else. I had my phone set to record following Detective Murphy's instructions. Oregon's one-party consent law meant I could legally record our conversation without Brandon's knowledge. Brandon, I need to ask you something. I called Portland General Hospital. A pause. I could hear him breathing. What? What do you mean? There's no Dr. Michelle Carter. There's no surgery scheduled for Sarah. Room 314 is in the pediatric ward. The silence stretched on for nearly 30 seconds. When Brandon finally spoke, his voice had changed completely. Dad, I can explain. I'm sure you can. I talked to Sarah yesterday. She feels fine. She went to a farmer's market. She has no idea she's supposedly having surgery tomorrow. Dad, please. You don't understand. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. I need this money. What kind of trouble, Brandon? I made some bad investments and there are people who aren't patient about getting their money back. Gambling debts. Another long pause. How did you? $140,000 at Thunder Bay Casino. Sold to loan sharks charging 18% monthly interest. Should I go on? I heard what sounded like Brandon sitting down heavily. Dad, they're going to hurt me, maybe hurt Sarah too, if I can't pay them something substantial by this week. So you thought you'd lie about your wife having cancer surgery? It wasn't cancer. I never said cancer, just a mass that needed to be removed. The distinction seemed important to him somehow, as if there were degrees of acceptable lies when it came to fabricating medical emergencies. Brandon, I've been a doctor for 40 years. I've seen real medical emergencies. I've held patients' hands while they waited for surgery that would save or end their lives. And you used that. You weaponized that sacred trust to try to steal money from me. I wasn't stealing. I was going to pay you back. With what? You owe more money than you make in 3 years. You're paying for an apartment for your mistress. Ashley isn't. It's not what you think. $4,200 a month rent plus her credit cards and car lease. All in your name. All while you're married to Sarah, who has no idea any of this exists. The recording was capturing everything: Brandon's admissions, his rationalizations, his complete lack of understanding about what he'd done. Dad, I made mistakes. But I love Sarah. I never wanted her to get hurt. You're about to lose your house to foreclosure because you can't make the mortgage payments. Your credit cards are maxed out. You've borrowed against your life insurance. And instead of being honest with your wife about the financial devastation you've created, you decided to fake a medical emergency. I panicked. Okay. I panicked and I thought if I could just get enough to pay them something to buy some time. $85,000 would buy you how long exactly? 2 months? 3? Then what? Fake Sarah's death and ask for funeral expenses? Dad, please. Please don't do this. I know I messed up, but if you don't help me they're going to take everything anyway. At least this way Sarah doesn't have to know. Sarah doesn't have to know that her husband is a gambling addict with a mistress who owes more money than their house is worth. She doesn't deserve this mess if I can just fix it quietly by lying to everyone who loves you. Brandon was crying now. I know you think I'm terrible. I know what this looks like, but I love my family, Dad. I love Sarah. I love the kids. I lost control. When did it start? The gambling a couple years ago. Just small stuff at first. But then I had a big win and I thought I could make enough to pay for the kids' college. Maybe help Sarah start her own tutoring business. Instead I lost everything and kept chasing it back. And Ashley. I met her at the casino. She made me feel different, like I wasn't just a failure. But it got complicated fast. She needed help with rent and I wanted to help her. And before I knew it. The recording was almost 47 minutes long by the time Brandon finished his confession. He'd admitted to the fake medical emergency, the gambling addiction, the financial infidelity, and the affair. He'd also revealed details about the loan sharks that Detective Murphy would find very useful. Brandon, I said finally, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Yeah. I'm not giving you the money. But Dad. And I'm not keeping your secrets anymore. What does that mean? It means Sarah deserves to know the truth about her life. It means your gambling debts are your responsibility to figure out, and it means you need to face the consequences of your choices. But I wasn't done yet. The next morning I drove to Sarah's house. Brandon's car wasn't in the driveway. He was probably at work trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Sarah answered the door with a smile that broke my heart. She was wearing her teaching clothes, probably grading papers before heading to school. Dr. Whitman, what a nice surprise. Come in. Come in. Can I make you some coffee? That would be nice, dear. We sat at her kitchen table surrounded by the evidence of a normal life. Children's artwork on the refrigerator, grocery lists, a calendar marked with school events and family activities. Sarah had no idea that her entire world was built on lies. Sarah, I need to talk to you about something serious. Her expression shifted to concern. Is everything all right? You look worried. Yesterday Brandon called me asking for $85,000 for your emergency surgery. Sarah's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. My what? He said you had a mass that needed to be removed. Emergency surgery today with Dr. Michelle Carter at Portland General Hospital. George I, don't I have no idea what you're talking about. I feel fine. I haven't been to any doctor and I'm certainly not having surgery today. She sat down, her cup, her hand shaking slightly. Why would Brandon say that? I pulled out my phone and showed her the recording app. I recorded our conversation last night. I think you need to hear what your husband said. You recorded him? George, that sounds so. I know how it sounds. But Sarah, what I'm about to play for you will change your life. Are you sure you want to hear it? She nodded, though she looked pale. I played selected portions of the recording. Brandon's admission about the fake medical emergency, his confession about the gambling debts, the details about Ashley Reed and the apartment he was paying for. Sarah listened without speaking, her face cycling through confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally devastation. $140,000, she whispered. That's just the gambling debt. According to my investigation, your total household debt is closer to $200,000 when you factor in the maxed-out credit cards and the money he's spending on his mistress. Ashley Reed, she said the name like it tasted bitter. Who is she? I don't know much about her, but Brandon has been paying for her apartment, her car, her credit cards for 8 months. And Sarah stood up and walked to the window, staring out at her backyard where her children played on a swing set Brandon had installed 2 summers ago. The car repairs, she said suddenly, last year when he said both our transmissions needed work, $31,000. I thought it seemed high, but I don't know anything about cars. The business loan the year before was also fake as far as I can tell. And I defended him. Her voice was hollow. When my sister said he was acting strange, when my mother said something seemed off about our finances, I told them they were being paranoid. She turned back to me, tears in her eyes but her voice steady. What else do you know? I told her about the foreclosure proceedings that were likely coming, about the loan sharks and the 18% monthly interest, about Detective Murphy and the legal implications of fabricating a medical emergency. So he was going to let me go to work today thinking I was having surgery tomorrow while he collected $85,000 from you based on my fake illness. That's correct. And if you hadn't investigated, if you'd just given him the money, how long before he needed more? Detective Murphy estimates 2 to 3 months before he'd be in the same desperate situation. Sarah sat back down, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. I need to ask you something, George, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course. Did you ever suspect? Over the years, did you see signs that something was wrong? I considered lying to spare her feelings, but she deserved honesty. Yes. The requests for money never quite made sense. His explanations were always vague and he seemed to be living above his means for someone who supposedly needed financial help. But you gave him the money anyway. I did. I told myself I was helping family. But the truth is I was enabling him because it was easier than confronting what I suspected. Sarah nodded slowly. I think we all did that. It's easier to believe the lies when the truth is so much worse. What will you do now? I don't know yet, but I know I can't keep living a lie. She looked around her kitchen again. Do you think they'll take the house? Probably, unless you can restructure the debt somehow. But with Brandon's credit destroyed and his income committed to gambling debts and supporting his mistress. His mistress. She said it again, testing how it sounded. I keep thinking I should feel angrier about that part, but honestly the fake medical emergency feels worse. Using my fictional illness to steal from you, there's something especially cruel about that. In medicine we have a term for when an infection spreads and starts killing healthy tissue. Sometimes the only way to save the patient is to cut out everything that's been contaminated. Sarah looked at me with new understanding. You think I should divorce him? I think you should protect yourself and your children. Brandon made choices that put your entire family at risk, and he was willing to destroy trust with everyone who loves him to avoid facing consequences. When will you tell him that you know everything? I showed her my phone again. I already did. Last night's recording captured 47 minutes of confessions. He knows I'm not giving him the money, and I told him I wouldn't keep his secrets. The final twist changed everything. That afternoon I was home when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Brandon standing on my porch looking like he hadn't slept in days. Dad, we need to talk. I think we said everything last night. Please just give me 5 minutes. Against my better judgment I let him in. He sat on my living room couch, the same couch where he'd played video games as a teenager, where he'd brought Sarah to meet me for the first time 15 years ago. I talked to Sarah this morning, he said. I figured you would. She's leaving me, taking the kids to her sister's place. She won't even discuss it. Can you blame her? Dad, I know I screwed up. I know I lied about the surgery. And I know you found out about Ashley and the gambling. But you don't understand the pressure I've been under. Pressure you created. The loan sharks. They're not patient people. They've made it clear what happens if I don't pay them something substantial by Friday. What does that have to do with me? Brandon's composure cracked. I need that money, Dad. Not the full 85, but something enough to buy me time to figure this out. By continuing to lie and steal, by keeping my family safe. You think this is just about me? These people know where Sarah works. They know where the kids go to school. I studied my son's face, trying to see past the manipulation to whatever might be genuine fear. If you're really worried about their safety, you have options that don't involve defrauding your family. Like what? You could go to the police. You could file for bankruptcy. You could check yourself into gambling addiction treatment. You could get a second job and start paying off your debts. Honestly, that would take years. I don't have years. But you'd have your integrity. Brandon laughed bitterly. My integrity, Dad, my integrity was gone the first time I doubled down on a losing hand because I thought I could win back what I'd lost. My integrity disappeared when I started lying to Sarah about where our money was going. What I have left is a family that I'm trying to protect by traumatizing them with fake medical emergencies. That was desperation. I wasn't thinking clearly. And Ashley Reed, was she desperation too? Brandon's shoulders sagged. Ashley was an escape. When everything felt overwhelming, when I felt like a failure at home and at work and at the casino, she made me feel like someone worth being with. For $4,200 a month. It wasn't about the money for her. Not at first, but it became about the money. Everything becomes about the money when you don't have any. I looked at this man who was my son, trying to reconcile him with the boy I'd raised. Where had I gone wrong? Had I been too permissive when he was young, too demanding? Had my own focus on my medical career left gaps in his moral development? Brandon, I want you to understand something. Last night's phone call was recorded. His eyes widened. What? Oregon is a one-party consent state. I can legally record our conversations without your knowledge. You recorded me confessing to everything? 47 minutes of detailed admissions. The fake medical emergency, the gambling addiction, the affair, the financial fraud, all of it. Brandon stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Dad, you can't use that against me. I'm your son. And you tried to steal from me by faking your wife's medical emergency. That's different. How? Because I'm desperate. Because I don't know what else to do. Because I'm drowning and you're the only one who can throw me a rope. I did throw you a rope multiple times. The business loan in 2022, the car repair money in 2023. But instead of using those ropes to climb out of trouble, you used them to dig deeper holes. Those weren't enough. They were never going to be enough, Brandon, because the problem isn't money. The problem is that you've become someone who lies to get what he wants regardless of who gets hurt. Brandon stopped pacing and turned to face me. So what now? You turn the recording over to the police. Your own son goes to prison. I haven't decided what to do with the recording yet. What would it take for you to delete it? You can't negotiate your way out of this one. Everyone has a price, Dad. What's yours? The words hung in the air between us like poison. My own son asking what it would cost to buy my silence about his crimes against our family. Get out. Dad. Get out of my house now. Please just tell me what you want. I'll do anything. I want the son I raised back, but that person seems to be gone. Brandon stared at me for a long moment, then walked toward the door. You're making a mistake, Dad. You think you're teaching me some kind of lesson, but all you're doing is destroying our family. I'm not the one who destroyed our family. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. When this all falls apart, when Sarah and the kids are living in some one-bedroom apartment because we lost everything, remember that you could have prevented it. After he left, I sat in my living room for a long time thinking about tissue necrosis again. Sometimes the infection spreads so far that cutting it out leaves a wound that takes a very long time to heal. But the alternative is watching the whole organism die. I picked up my phone and called Detective Murphy. Some surgeries save lives by cutting out infected tissue. The next morning brought consequences that moved faster than I had anticipated. Detective Murphy called at 7:30 a.m. Dr. Whitman, we need to talk. Can you come down to the station this morning? Of course. Has something happened? Let's just say your son's situation is more complicated than we initially thought. I arrived at the police station an hour later, my mind racing through possibilities. Detective Murphy led me to a small conference room where another man in a suit was waiting. Dr. Whitman, this is Agent Carl Anderson from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. FBI. This had escalated beyond local fraud. Agent Anderson shook my hand. Dr. Detective Murphy shared the recording you made with your son. We've been investigating Thunder Bay Casino for several months now as part of a larger operation targeting illegal gambling operations and loan sharking rings. Loan sharking rings. The people your son owes money to aren't just casino creditors. They're part of an organized criminal enterprise that uses gambling debts to trap people into other illegal activities. Money laundering mostly, but sometimes identity theft and credit fraud. My blood ran cold. Are you saying Brandon is involved in organized crime? We're saying he's in deeper than you know. The recording you made included some details about his debt structure that help confirm information we've been gathering through other sources. Detective Murphy leaned forward. Doctor, we ran a more comprehensive background check on your son after yesterday's conversation. He's not just supporting Ashley Reed financially. She's been using credit cards and bank accounts he opened for her to run online scams targeting elderly people. The room seemed to tilt around me. Elderly people, romance scams primarily. She creates fake profiles on dating sites and social media, targets lonely seniors, builds relationships with them over weeks or months, then asks for money for various emergencies. The credit cards your son opened for her have been used to process thousands of dollars in fraudulent transactions. Does Brandon know about this? Agent Anderson consulted his notes. Based on what we've uncovered, it's unlikely he was unaware. The apartment he's paying for is essentially a boiler room operation. Ashley Reed isn't the only person involved. There are 3 other women running similar scams from different units in the same complex. So when Brandon told me he was just helping his mistress with rent, he was financing a criminal operation. Detective Murphy finished. Whether he admits it or not, he's been an active participant in defrauding vulnerable seniors out of their life savings. I felt sick. Bad enough that my son had gambling addiction and was cheating on his wife. But to discover he was involved in scamming elderly people like me, people who'd worked their whole lives and deserved to enjoy their retirement in peace, was devastating. What happens now? We need your permission to use the recording as evidence in our larger investigation, Agent Anderson said. Your son's admissions help establish the connection between the gambling operation and the fraud ring. And Brandon, he'll be arrested. Federal charges for wire fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. The fake medical emergency you recorded is actually the least serious charge he'll face. I thought about Sarah and the children. His family, they don't know anything about this, I assume. We found no evidence that your daughter-in-law was aware of any of these activities. The children are minors, so they're protected regardless. How long has this been going on? Detective Murphy checked his file. We estimate at least 18 months. The gambling addiction probably came first. Then when he couldn't pay his debts, they recruited him to help fund their fraud operation. It's a common pattern. They get people trapped with debt, then offer them a way to make money quickly. Except the money comes from stealing from innocent people. Exactly. Agent Anderson leaned back in his chair. Doctor, I want you to understand something. Your decision to investigate your son's story and record that conversation likely saved several elderly people from being victimized. These operations are sophisticated and hard to track. Your evidence gives us what we need to shut down this particular ring. Will you need me to testify? Probably. And we'll need the original recording file properly authenticated. I handed over my phone. Take whatever you need. As we wrapped up the meeting, Detective Murphy walked me to my car. Doctor, I know this is a lot to process. Your son made choices that led him down a very dark path. I keep wondering if I missed signs, if I could have intervened earlier somehow. From what I've seen, your son is an adult who made calculated decisions to commit crimes. You can't take responsibility for that. But maybe if I hadn't given him money before, if I'd been more suspicious, then he might have found other victims. At least this way you helped stop him. That evening I drove to Sarah's sister's house. I found Sarah in the backyard watching her children play on a swing set similar to the one Brandon had built in their own yard. George. She looked exhausted. I heard the FBI came to see you. You heard? Agent Anderson called me. They wanted to make sure I understood what Brandon was involved in. She shook her head. Romance scams targeting elderly people. I can't even process it. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry this happened to you and the children. Are you? Because part of me wonders if you're relieved to finally have proof that your suspicions about Brandon were justified. The question caught me off guard. I'm not relieved about any of this. But you were right. All those times you hesitated before giving him money, all those questions you asked that seemed overly suspicious. You were right to be suspicious. I sat down next to her on the back porch steps. Being right doesn't feel like winning when the cost is this high. The children keep asking when Daddy's coming home. I don't know what to tell them. What did the FBI say about timing? They'll arrest him within the next few days. Agent Anderson said it would be better if the children weren't home when it happens. She wiped her eyes. How do I explain to a 7-year-old that their father is a criminal? You tell them that sometimes adults make very bad choices and that those choices have consequences, but that it doesn't change how much they're loved. By me and by you, I hope. Always. We sat in silence for a while watching the children play. Normal childhood laughter in the midst of their world falling apart. Sarah, I need to tell you something about the recording. What about it? When I made it, I was angry, hurt that my son would lie to me about your health, but I never imagined it would lead to this. Then he called me heartless. But I wasn't done yet. The call I'd been dreading came Thursday morning. Dr. Whitman, this is Agent Anderson. We've made the arrest. I'd been expecting this call, but it still hit me like a physical blow. How did it go? Peacefully. He was at his office when we took him into custody. No drama, no resistance. Did he say anything? He asked to call you. I wasn't sure I was ready for that conversation, but I knew it was inevitable. When he gets his phone call in about an hour, I wanted to give you a heads up. The call came at 11:15 a.m., Dad. Brandon's voice was subdued, different than I'd ever heard it. I'm here. They're saying I'm part of some organized crime ring. That Ashley was running scams and I knew about it. Were you? A long pause. I knew something wasn't right about her business, but I didn't ask questions because I needed her to keep generating income. Income from defrauding elderly people. I told myself I didn't know for sure. I told myself it was probably legitimate online marketing or something. But you knew it wasn't. Yeah, I knew it wasn't. This admission felt different than the others. Less desperate, more honest. Dad, I need to ask you something. What? Did you know when you made that recording that it would lead to this? No. I thought it would just be evidence of fraud related to the fake medical emergency. But if you had known, would you still have done it? I considered the question carefully. Yes. Even knowing it would destroy my life. Brandon, you destroyed your own life. I just documented it. I keep thinking about what you said about cutting out infected tissue. What about it? Am I the infected tissue? The pain in his voice was real. And for a moment I heard the boy I'd raised instead of the criminal he'd become. You made choices that infected our family relationships. Whether you're redeemable depends on what you do next. And the prosecutor wants me to cooperate. Tell them everything I know about the operation in exchange for a reduced sentence. What do you know? More than I want to admit. Names, locations, how the money flows, which police officers they have on payroll. Police officers. Dad, this thing goes deep. The casino, the fraud ring, some of the local cops, they're all connected. The scope of it was staggering. My son hadn't just fallen into gambling addiction and made some bad personal choices. He'd become part of a criminal conspiracy that reached into law enforcement. Are you going to cooperate? I don't know. If I do, I'll probably get 5 to 7 years instead of 20 to life, but I'll also be a snitch in federal prison. If you don't, then I go away for most of the rest of my life and all these other criminals keep operating. What does your lawyer say? That I should cooperate. That my only chance of ever having a relationship with my children again is to help shut this down and serve my time. What do you want me to say, Brandon? I want you to tell me what you would do. I thought about all the elderly people who were being victimized by this operation. People who'd worked their whole lives and deserved to enjoy their retirement without being manipulated and robbed. People like my patients had been vulnerable, trusting, deserving of protection. I would cooperate even knowing it might get me killed in prison. Even knowing that your silence would mean more innocent people get hurt. Another long pause. You really think I'm that far gone? That I need to risk my life to make up for what I've done? I think you need to decide who you want to be going forward. The person who protects criminals to save himself, or the person who protects victims even when it costs him something. And if I cooperate, will you bring the kids to visit me sometimes when I'm in prison? That's not my decision to make anymore, Brandon. That's up to Sarah and what she thinks is best for the children. But you won't try to poison them against me. I'll tell them the truth when they're old enough to understand it. Nothing more, nothing less. When we hung up, I sat in my kitchen and wondered what I would tell my grandchildren about their father when the time came. I gave him one chance to tell the truth. The next morning, Agent Anderson called with an update. Your son has agreed to cooperate fully. His information has already led to 3 additional arrests, and we expect more in the coming weeks. How is he doing? As well as can be expected. He's in protective custody while he works with prosecutors to build cases against his former associates. What about Ashley Reed? Arrested yesterday. She was actually the ringleader of the fraud operation. Your son was just one of several men she was using as financial fronts. The irony wasn't lost on me. Brandon thought he was supporting a mistress who made him feel important when actually he was just another mark being manipulated by a professional criminal. Dr. Whitman, there's something else. During his debriefing, your son provided information about police corruption that goes beyond what we initially suspected. This investigation is going to get bigger before it gets smaller. That afternoon, I drove to the Crystal Heights apartment complex. Police tape surrounded several units and investigators were carrying out boxes of evidence. The complex manager, Jennifer, was standing in the parking lot talking to reporters. This is a quiet family complex, she was saying. We had no idea about any illegal activities, and I wondered how many of the quiet families were actually criminal operations and how many were genuinely innocent people who just happened to live in the wrong place. My phone rang. Sarah, George the First need to ask you something. What is it? Brandon's lawyer called. He wants to know if I'll bring the children to see him before he goes to prison. What do you think? I think my children deserve better than having their last memory of their father be him in an orange jumpsuit behind glass. That's probably wise, but I also think they deserve to say goodbye somehow. He wasn't always a criminal, George. For the first few years of our marriage he was a good father. What are you considering? Maybe a phone call, supervised brief, just so they can hear his voice and he can tell them he loves them. That sounds reasonable. Will you be there when I do it? In case it goes wrong, in case he tries to manipulate them somehow. Of course. Mom, the phone call happened that evening at Sarah's sister's house. We put it on speaker so I could monitor the conversation. Daddy. My granddaughter Emma's voice was small and uncertain. Hi, baby. Hi, Emma. Is Jacob there too? I'm here, Dad. My grandson's voice was more guarded. At 12 he understood more about what was happening. I want you both to know that Daddy loves you very much and that I'm going to be away for a while. How long? Emma asked. Brandon looked at Sarah through the phone, seeking guidance. She shook her head slightly. Don't make promises you can't keep. A long time, sweetheart. Several years. Are you sick? Emma wanted to know. No, baby. I'm not sick. I made some very bad choices and now I have to face the consequences of those choices. What kind of bad choices? Jacob asked. His tone was challenging, almost adult. I lied to people. I took money that didn't belong to me. I hurt our family. Did you hurt Mommy? Yes, buddy. I hurt Mommy very badly. Are you sorry? The question hung in the air. I watched Sarah's face as she waited for Brandon's answer. Yes, Jacob. I'm sorrier than I've ever been about anything in my life. Sorry enough to fix it. I can't fix what I broke, son. But I'm going to try to make sure no one else gets hurt the way I hurt people. What does that mean? Sarah intervened gently. It means Daddy is helping the police catch other bad people. So you're like a good guy now? Emma asked. Brandon's voice cracked. I'm trying to be, sweetheart. I'm trying to be the kind of person you can be proud of again someday. Will you write us letters? Emma wanted to know. If Mommy says it's okay, I'll write you letters every week. Sarah nodded her permission. And when you come back, will you live with us again? Emma asked. This was the question Sarah had been dreading. She took the phone off speaker and spoke privately with Brandon for a moment, then put it back on speaker. Emma, when I come back I'll be a different person than I am now. And Mommy will be different too. We'll have to see what kind of family we can be then. But you'll still be our daddy. I'll always be your daddy. No matter what happens, no matter how long I'm away, I will always love you and Jacob more than anything in the world. After they hung up, Emma climbed into Sarah's lap. Mommy, is Daddy ever really coming back? Sarah looked at me over her daughter's head. I don't know, baby. But even if he doesn't, we're going to be okay. Jacob, older and more skeptical, stood by the window. Grandpa George. Yes. Did you know he was bad before this happened? I suspected something was wrong, but I didn't know he was involved with criminals. Are you mad at him? I'm disappointed in him and I'm sad for all the people he hurt. Are you mad at us? Why would I be mad at you? Because we're his kids. I knelt down to Jacob's eye level. You and Emma are not responsible for your father's choices. You're innocent in all of this and I love you exactly the same as I always have. But I wasn't done yet. 3 weeks later, the scope of the investigation had expanded beyond anything I could have imagined. Agent Anderson called with an update that would change everything I thought I knew about Brandon's situation. Dr. Whitman, we need to meet. There's been a development. We met at the same police station where this had all started. But this time Agent Anderson wasn't alone. He'd brought 2 other federal agents and a woman I didn't recognize. Doctor, this is Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Martinez. She's prosecuting the case. Ms. Martinez shook my hand. Dr. Whitman, your son's cooperation has been extraordinary. The information he's provided has led to the dismantling of one of the largest fraud operations we've ever uncovered in the Pacific Northwest. How large? Agent Anderson consulted his notes. 43 arrests so far, 3 police officers, 2 bank managers, a city council member, and dozens of people running various scams. The total amount stolen from victims is estimated at over $20 million. $20 million. I tried to process the magnitude of it. Your son wasn't a minor player in this operation, Agent Anderson continued. Based on what we've learned, he was actually being groomed for a leadership role. The gambling addiction was just the hook they used to recruit him. What do you mean? Ms. Martinez leaned forward. Dr. Whitman, your son has a background in insurance and financial services. The criminal organization needed someone with his expertise to help them identify high-value targets, wealthy retirees with significant assets. He was helping them choose victims. He was providing them with information about his insurance clients' names, asset values, family situations, everything they needed to craft personalized fraud schemes. I felt sick. How many of his clients were victimized? 17 that we know of so far, total losses of approximately $3 million. But the good news, Agent Anderson added, is that his cooperation has allowed us to recover most of the stolen money and return it to victims. Without his inside information about how the operation worked, we never would have been able to trace the money laundering network. Ms. Martinez opened a folder. Dr. Whitman, because of your son's extraordinary cooperation and the significance of the information he's provided, we're prepared to recommend a reduced sentence of 3 to 5 years instead of the 20 to life he was originally facing. That's a significant reduction. It's unprecedented, actually. But his information didn't just help us solve existing crimes. It helped us prevent future ones. The operation he was part of had expansion plans that would have victimized hundreds more people. What happens now? He'll plead guilty to federal conspiracy charges next week. He'll serve his time in federal prison, probably minimum security given his cooperation level. With good behavior he could be out in 3 years. 3 years instead of 20. I thought about Sarah and the children, how different their lives would be with that timeline. Dr. Whitman, Agent Anderson said, I want you to know that your decision to record that conversation and bring it to our attention likely saved dozens of elderly people from being defrauded. This operation was expanding rapidly and we had no other way to penetrate it. Will the victims get their money back? Most of them, yes. We've frozen accounts containing about $18 million. It'll take time to sort through everything, but the majority of the stolen funds will be returned. Ms. Martinez closed her folder. Your son also specifically requested that we let you know something. He wanted you to understand that his decision to cooperate wasn't about getting a lighter sentence. He said you taught him that sometimes cutting out infected tissue is the only way to save the patient. After they left, I sat in my car in the police station parking lot thinking about second chances and redemption. Brandon would serve 3 years instead of 20, but more importantly, he'd chosen to help protect other people instead of protecting himself. It didn't undo the damage he'd caused to our family, but it suggested that somewhere inside the criminal he'd become the son I'd raised was still there. The final twist changed everything. 6 months later I received a letter from Brandon. It was the first time we'd communicated since his sentencing, and I wasn't sure I was ready to read it, but I owed it to the grandchildren who asked about their father every week to understand where things stood. Dad, the letter began, I know I have no right to ask for anything from you, but I wanted you to know what I've learned in prison and what I plan to do when I get out. I'm in a minimum security facility in Oregon, and I spend most of my time working in the library and attending addiction counseling. I've been sober for 8 months now, the longest period in 3 years. The counselor here helped me understand something about the fake medical emergency that I couldn't see before. It wasn't just fraud. It was a violation of everything sacred about family and trust. You spent your career saving lives. And I used that knowledge to manipulate you by faking a threat to life. I also understand now that what I did to Sarah was worse than having an affair. I stole her right to make informed decisions about her own life. She was living a lie that I created, and she deserved better. The money I helped steal from elderly victims, I think about them every day. People who worked their whole lives, who trusted the wrong person for 5 minutes and lost everything. The prosecutor showed me victim impact statements from some of them. I'll carry that weight forever. But I wanted you to know that good has come from my cooperation. Last week Agent Anderson wrote to tell me that the investigation led to new federal legislation about elder fraud. Sarah sent me a newspaper article about it. They're calling it the Portland Prevention Act. It requires new verification procedures and cooling-off periods for large financial transactions involving seniors. I'll be out in 2.5 years. I don't expect Sarah to take me back, and I don't expect you to trust me right away. But I wanted you to know that I plan to spend the rest of my life working with elder fraud prevention organizations. Maybe I can help protect the kinds of people I once helped victimize. You told me once that sometimes surgery requires cutting out infected tissue to save the patient. I think you were right to cut me out of the family when you did, but I hope that someday when I've proven I'm no longer infected there might be room for healing. I love you, Dad. Thank you for choosing the victims over your own son when it mattered most. It was the right thing to do. Your son Brandon. I read the letter 3 times, then called Sarah. He wrote to me too, she said. The children want to visit him next month. What do you think? I think their father is trying to become the man we always hoped he could be. It might take years to know if that's real, but maybe it's worth finding out. Some surgeries save lives by cutting out disease. Sometimes the patient survives and grows stronger. Time would tell if our family could heal from the surgery that saved us all. If you've ever been manipulated through a fake family emergency, share this story and let me know in the comments what state you're in where medical fraud like this might be easier to detect. Because the truth, as painful as it can be, is always better than the most comfortable lie.